I just have a little setup here. The actions are really simple. So you set up your sketches, you have a sense of like the action that you want to do. A couple of things when you're setting up your camera. The first is I like to put it on a timer because what that does is mean that I don't have to be like right here when it's taking the picture. And I also am not actually hitting the button when the picture is being made. So it gives a little bit more of a chance that I'm not going to shake the camera. The other things that I have with me are some different types of tape to work with. I also have Plexi, and that's something that I might work with if I wanted to create those layers or if what I was putting on top was messy, right? So I could put like a really solid background and then cover it with some kind of Plexi or plastic. And then I could put like food on top, or I could put paint, or I could put Play-Doh, and it wouldn't be impacting the background behind. So I'm going to take my first photo and see if in your process you can take maybe like 8 photos, 8 to 10. All right, so I'm gonna have like some stirrings happen. So the moss is gonna start to come alive. So I'm just shaking that a bit. All right, and from here, it's gonna start to open up a bit. And so if I was doing this in a little, like where I wanted really smooth motion, these would be less dramatic changes. It would be like a few things moving. Okay, and so my idea is that I'm gonna have this flower that was left over from Valentine's Day start to grow from the moss. This would be something where maybe I'd want to like prop this up a little bit so I could think about different clear materials that could give it some support. All right, so now I have my flower and I'm gonna make it start to, maybe I'll make it start to separate. I'm gonna make this moss kind of move around in a circle. as it starts to separate. So maybe my hand got in with that muscle. I'm gonna make a little all right, so I've made an animation to some degree. So now let's see what that looks like. So I have my images here. If I was going to be doing this in a more refined way, I would probably bring these into Photoshop and crop them with a consistent frame. So let's say I want these to be a square. I could make them like 6 inches by 6 inches. Or I could think about them in terms of pixels since we're working with digital video. But if I make this a consistent square up here, that will allow that piece to not look strange. All right. Cats. But that's just kind of like something that you can do in preparation. But I'm going to go ahead and jump to the animation part so that we have some time to do some extra aspects. All right, so the thing that you're going to need when you are preparing your images. So let's say I went and I cleaned these up. You know, I didn't want to have this grid background. I have my consistent square, and I want to put them all in one folder. So that's, you probably have something with the watermelon, and you want them all to be in one place. So you don't have to go and dig and look in all these different directions. Once you open up Photoshop, and some of your Photoshops might look different depending on the version that you're using. Photoshop's been kind of fun lately in that they are making updates like every 3 months that sometimes dramatically make changes. And so I'm using Adobe Photoshop 2020, which is part of the CC package. So I'm going to create a new document. And here, when I pull this up, I have a bunch of different options for preset canvas sizes. When I'm working with film and video, I can go here to film and video and choose something based off of the type of film that I made. So I could have like a very HD 1080p, like high resolution film that I would be setting a orientation for. Or I have a lot of different options in terms of film or regular HD, and I'm actually going to choose something that's pretty, yeah, let's try that. So I'm going to choose film. You can decide if you want a white background or you could have a background color. You could have it be transparent. You could have it be black, a lot of different options. All right, so I have my canvas. I'm gonna go to scripts. And what I wanna do is load files into Stack. And a screen like this comes up. And what I wanna do is find my folder. And I'm gonna choose all of these. I can have some options, like if I did move my camera around a lot, I could attempt to automatically align the source images. But I feel like it was pretty good, so I'm gonna press OK here. So this might take a second, depending on your file size. And if you're following along on the handout, it's on step 5, stack your photos in Photoshop. All right, so I have my images here, and I have a timeline. If yours does not look like this, what you want to do is go to Window, and you want to select Timeline so that the timeline is showing up on Photoshop. So what I want to do first is pull down here where there's a drop down, and I want to create a frame animation. If when you open the timeline panel, there was already an image right here, you can just skip this step. So I'm going to click that. And what I see is just my first image right here on top. So if you want to go to step 7, add and reverse, you're going to use this flyout menu, which is these little horizontal lines in the top right corner of the timeline panel. And you want to go to make frames from layers. And here I have all of my frames. You can see that how they were entered in, that it's actually starting with my last image as opposed to the first. So what I want to go to is go back to this flyout menu. I want to select all frames, and I want to reverse frames. And that was like a really quick way to make that happen. Now I want to think about maybe creating a loop. At this point, I can preview my animation so you can see what so can you guys see that in action? So I might want to change some things here. So one thing I can do is if I want to have a loop, I can go down to this bottom corner and choose forever, once, or 3 times. I also have the ability to change the timing on each one of these. So I could make things go slower at certain frames, or I could speed them up somewhere. I could also think about making this into a loop so that when I actually export it, that it loops and not just looping in Photoshop. So I'm going to go back to that flyout menu, and I'm going to select all frames again. And I'm going to press the plus button down at the bottom, and it's going to duplicate all of my frames. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find my middle one where there's probably a duplicate. So I think, where are we? Okay. And I want to, actually first what I want to do is I want to select these because this just jumps automatically to here. I think I want it to like go back into the ground. So I'm going to start at frame 24 for mine and hold down the shift key and select the second half that I just duplicated. And I'm going to go to that flyout menu again, and I'm going to reverse frames. Then I'm going to go to that duplicate one right here. And I'm going to select it, hit the flyout menu, and then delete frame. All right, so let's preview this again. Cool, so it's kind of getting somewhere. All right, so I can decide here too to start messing with my time. So maybe I want things to slow down in some space. So I'm gonna actually make this area where the flower is emerging to go a little bit slower. So if I select multiple ones, it will change all of them if I change the first one. And maybe with these reverse scenes, maybe I'll speed that up a little bit. And you can put in your own custom times. So I'm going to press play. So I think that's a little too slow. So I'm going to select them all and just make them universal. So the cool thing about Photoshop is, and it's included in your handout, is that you can actually also go and add writing or do filters or change the color in each one of the frames. And this is something called rotoscoping. So you would just match that your frame is selected and that you can see that particular frame. And maybe you want to apply some kind of filter or drawing or something. I'm going to put some photo filter on it. So I could have this really kind of tonal experience. Now I'm going to go to the second one and make sure the second layer is selected. And then go to my third layer, and so on and so forth. But you can write things, you can make, yeah, a lot of different changes that can be really fun. I'm going to go ahead and export my video. And so what I want to do, if you're following along on the handbook, or sorry, the handout, it would be step 10. So I'm going to go to File, Export, and you see you have some different options here. I want to choose Render Video, which is down at the bottom here. And I'm going to call this Flower. Keep an eye on where you're actually saving it, which is an issue I have. All right, and you can leave these defaults, and I'm gonna render this. It might take a second depending on your particular computer. And so as this is exporting, we also might want to think about adding audio. Photoshop in frame animation doesn't allow for audio in this annoying way, but there's a workaround, and that's exporting the video and then re-importing it into Photoshop and working with the video timeline as opposed to the frame animation timeline that we're in right now. All right, so let's see what our video looks like. Yeah, I made those weird filters, so yeah. Yay. All right.